We've been talking about this controversy over a transgender runner for Seattle Academy, a biological boy competing against girls, and some protesters who were told to leave under threat of arrest the recent semifinals in cross country. So we'll have an update on that. And also, the King County Republican Party is not so pleased with some things Semi Bird said on this show, and they wanted to respond, so we will certainly give them an opportunity. So let's start with the update on the transgender runner protest that ended with about 6 people being told to leave the premises of the track over at South Whidbey High School where this happened. So there were 2 videos we played for you on the show yesterday that were taken by these protesters who had signs like "Defend Women's Sports" and "Boys are not girls." Well, they had, and I think the school anticipated their arrival. They had, we learned, contacted law enforcement prior because this had become such a controversy because a national figure, Riley Gaines, a former collegiate swimmer, has brought attention to it. So they were expecting protesters. So they get there, they got these signs. The school says, "You got to leave." Parents say, "No," or these citizens say no. And so the school at first asked the city of Langley Police Department to intervene.
Do whatever you want, but you need to leave.
But can
we
you
will
tell
put
us
our
the
signs
basis?
away. I cannot remove them.
Okay.
I spoke with my chief last night, and we discussed kind of the issue at hand, and I cannot remove them.
Okay. Well, the sheriff's will then.
Okay. You're welcome to call them out.
Okay.
I cannot do that, though.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, so that was interesting. Langley PD officers like, unless they get violent, we're not going to do anything. I already talked to my chief about it. The school says, well, the sheriff's office will, and indeed they called the sheriff's office, Island County Sheriff's Office, and they did.
You are not allowed to be here. This gentleman here is responsible for this property. He has asked you nicely to leave. Either you can leave and go out to the road and protest all you want. You're more than welcome to. Okay? No questions asked, no other words said. You can leave that way, or you can be arrested for trespass.
Yeah, so they opted to leave and not get arrested for trespass, and I believe they went out to the road and waved their signs. So there were 2 things when we first brought you the story yesterday that we were actively trying to understand and follow up on. So we'd placed calls to the Langley Police Department and the Island County Sheriff's Office. I have not heard back from the Langley Police Department. I did, however, have a very long, nice phone chat with the sheriff up in Island County yesterday, and he told me, a couple things that, yes, kind of what we're seeing in that video is reflective of what happened. What he said is that the school had let the sheriff's office know beforehand that there might be an issue. He said that this is not Langley PD jurisdiction, so he doesn't know why there was even a Langley PD officer who was there suggesting that they had, authority to be able to intervene. He said, no, this is definitely Island County Sheriff's Office territory, so that's why they took action on this. And he says what the school conveyed to the deputy there is that they felt as if these individuals were causing a disturbance. So they were peaceful. I don't think anybody's denying that they were peaceful, but they had these signs and they were standing at one of the main entrances, and there had been some words exchanged, according to what the sheriff told me that he heard from the school, people pro and against, but the school felt as if it was causing a disturbance. And so that is what the sheriff said. The sheriff, however, has also said that he feels like there's some misinformation circulating online about what his deputies did or did not do. He said he's seen people saying that deputies went into the stands and removed anyone who doesn't want biological boys competing against women. He says that's not true. He says there were some individuals wearing t-shirts and they treated that just like people with signs and asked them to leave. So the other question yesterday that I frankly did not know and did not have an answer to and that we were trying to effort is, what law did they break? Because certainly the First Amendment, is a big one that protects speech. What I didn't know is, to what extent can someone protest on public school grounds? It's a public school paid for with taxpayer funds. We have the First Amendment, but there are limitations under RCW, so the Revised Code of Washington. And the sheriff in Island County pointed me to 2 in particular. He said both of these probably don't apply here, but there are 2 in particular that would allow this sort of free speech, exercise of free speech, to be limited on school grounds. So I'm not going to read the whole laws for you, but if you want to go look them up so you know what you can and cannot do on a public school property if you're planning on doing this protest at the state meet. RCW 28A 635-030, disturbing school activities or meetings. Any person who shall willfully create a disturbance on school premises during school hours or at school activities or school meetings shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, the penalty for which shall be a fine in any sum not more than $50. So that seems to be the RCW that they were using here. Now there's a second one, but this one is a little more serious. It says willfully disobeying school administrative personnel or refusing to leave public property. So basically, if you're like on school property drunk or something, or posing a risk or a threat to others. So that's kind of the more serious. It doesn't seem like that was the case with these protesters. Now, I will say, of that first RCW, which seems to be the one that the sheriff's office, and I spoke to the sheriff himself, that they used to enforce this, there's still a little gray area there. Because when you say any person who willfully creates a disturbance, I think reasonable people can disagree that they were creating a disturbance. Is it a disturbance to be holding signs peacefully outside the gates of the track and field complex? I don't know if I have an answer to that because I wasn't there. I don't know everything they said. I don't know the interactions that they had with people who might have been opposed to the signs that they had. But the bottom line was it seemed like it was up to the school administrator to decide whether he believed they were creating a disturbance, and then the sheriff's office came in and forced it. Now, if there were to have been arrests, and then this went to court, I'd be curious how that would play out. The bottom line is, though, and I said it yesterday, I think there's what's legal and there's what's right. I don't know if I like the idea of, first of all, opening up school grounds to basically anyone who wants to protest. I mean, think of how wrong that could go. But also, these are kids participating in track and field. You might not like the WIAA policy of allowing transgender athletes, but the kids didn't do it. And they're there trying to compete at the highest levels in high school athletics. They're trying to make it to state. So I just think as adults, it's like, okay, you have your strong political beliefs, that I agree with, by the way, that it doesn't make sense to allow biological boys or men to compete against biological girls or women. But I think there's other ways that you can go about it. So I don't think this story is going away. I'm sure that there'll be stories like this and video like this coming out of the state meet. But we just wanted to follow up and say there are RCWs on the books that limit the type of free speech, for lack of a better phrase, that you can engage in on school property if it's deemed that you're causing a disturbance.